Good evening, I'm Diane in Hong Kong and you're watching ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show, Hong Kong's economy is looking up. We tell you what's driving growth in the city. Commerce and Economic Development Secretary Greg So says he needs a long vacation. And new acting FBI chief grilled by U.S. Senate over James Comey's firing. All right, let's start with GDP figures that came out today in Hong Kong. The economy expanded by 3.4% in the January to March quarter from a year earlier. Now, that's a welcome improvement compared with 3.1% in the last quarter of 2016. The firm start was helped by buoyant global trade and the wealth effects from the city's robust property market. But analysts are warning growth may not be as stellar in the coming quarters. Chief Executive Siu Leung said Beijing's Belt and Road initiatives will become a new drive for local economy, helping the city's businesses grow outside Hong Kong. Speaking at a Law Society event, Leung said the city's one country, two systems principle has made Hong Kong an ideal partner for the mainland and the international market. Meantime, Justice Secretary Rimsky-Yuen pointed out Hong Kong's legal sector is leading in Asia, and its services can safeguard cross-border trade, serving as a catalyst for economic development. And expect to bid farewell soon to the Secretary of Commerce and Economic Development, Greg So, another official hinting he would not stay for another term. On a radio program, he said he wants to take a long vacation after his current term ends in July. But he said his will to serve the public remains. Separately, the minister has ruled out the idea of designating certain phone numbers to telemarketers. This comes amidst government efforts to curb the prevalent problem of unwanted telesales calls.
Telephone numbers Hong Kong are in limited supply, and we do not want to add one more digit to the telephone number. I don't think people would like to see that. And these people-to-people telecommunication, telemarketing call may not be able to fill up all these numbers under one, preceded one digit.
Disgraced former Chief Executive Donald Tsang is once again in court for a mention hearing, facing one count of accepting bribes as the city's leader. Accompanied by his wife and siblings, he showed up at the High Court this morning. He allegedly accepted free construction for a Shenzhen penthouse in return for granting a digital broadcast license to a company. Tsang is to return to court in September for the hearing, but he's currently on bail while he awaits appeal against another misconduct conviction. We move to the U.S. Just after former FBI Director James Comey was dismissed, the agency's acting chief is now subject to questioning over alleged Russian meddling in last year's presidential election. The U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee began grilling Andrew McCabe with questions directed towards President Donald Trump's highly controversial firing of Comey. McCabe refused to give details on whether he had heard Comey telling Trump that the president was not the subject of the investigation. However, he vowed to inform the panel of any political pressure to stop the probe. The U.S. Senate has approved President Donald Trump's trade representative nominee, Robert Lighthizer. It's a critical position ahead of major trade pact renegotiations with Canada and Mexico. The Senate voted on Thursday to confirm the veteran trade lawyer by a majority. The administration has had to wait for Lighthizer's confirmation before starting the renegotiations of the North American Free Trade Agreement. Trump has vowed to tear up the 23-year-old pact if he fails to get a better deal. Some Democrats, while critical of Trump's views on trade, said they were confident Lighthizer would help U.S. workers. And President Donald Trump has signed an executive order aimed at strengthening the federal government's cybersecurity. It's Trump's first significant move to address what he's called a top priority of his administration. The White House said the order also aimed to boost protection, of critical infrastructure, such as the energy grid and financial sector. The directive, which drew largely positive reviews from cyber experts and industry groups, lays out goals to develop a more robust cyber deterrence strategy, in part by forging strong cooperation with U.S. allies in cyberspace. Staying in the U.S., Secretary of State Rex Tillerson hosted foreign ministers from Arctic nations at a summit in Alaska on Thursday, where the president's reluctance to fight climate change cast a shadow over talks. Lisa Bernard reports.
The United States has been privileged to lead the Arctic Council.
U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson hosting foreign ministers from Arctic nations at a summit in Alaska Thursday, targeting a range of problems in the region, which is warming at a faster pace than any other part of the world. Clouding the talks, the U.S. president's stance on climate change.
The global warming and a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
President Trump's reluctance to fight global warming putting Tillerson in a tough spot. Arctic Council members from Canada, Norway, and other nations no doubt putting pressure on the Secretary of State to keep the U.S. in the 2015 Paris Agreement, from which Trump has threatened to pull out. Adding further pressure on Trump, scientists from the U.S. and other Arctic nations issued a report ahead of the meeting warning the impact of climate change left unchecked could lead to trillions of dollars worth of damage to infrastructure. The White House was expected to decide on whether the U.S. will leave the Paris deal by the end of the month, but now says that Trump needs more time.
To some other news, the European Union's chief Brexit negotiator, Michael Barnier, sought to reassure Ireland on Thursday that their interests are shared in divorce talks with Britain. Barnier addressed lawmakers inside the Irish Parliament, telling them that a united EU will be here for you. He said he will work with Dublin to avoid a hard border returning to the island. With close trading links to Britain and the only land border with the UK, Ireland is widely considered as the EU member with the most to lose when its bigger neighbour quits the bloc. All right, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. Hong Kong markets ended the week at 2.8% up, though it was a pretty slow trading day today. Let's take a look at the charts. The benchmark Hang Seng rose 0.1% to end at 25,156 points. The technology sector is still leading the charge in gains. Internet giant Tencent was up about 1.4%, while China Unicom Hong Kong traded about 1.1% higher. Wells Fargo doubled its cost-cutting target as it's still trying to recover from a sales scandal. The third largest U.S. bank plans to chop another $2 billion off its costs. That's on top of the same amount it pledged to slash earlier. The major cost cuts will come from closing 450 branches this year and next year. The major U.S. lender is still recovering from a sales scandal that involved bank employees opening as many as 2 million unauthorized accounts. South Korea ordered Hyundai Motor and Kia Motors to recall 240,000 vehicles after a report by a whistleblower. This is the first time the South Korean Transport Ministry has ordered a compulsory recall of the two automakers after they had rejected an earlier order for a voluntary recall. The ministry also urged investigation over whether the automakers covered up 5 safety defects. And staying on transport, Uber is facing the biggest challenge yet to its European rollout. That's after the EU's top court was advised to rule the ride-hailing firm as a transportation company rather than an app. This could impact on Uber's operations in other countries in the region. Europe has proved to be one of Uber's toughest markets, where it already faces restrictions. Some regions have forced the company to withdraw or curtail services with non-licensed taxi drivers. Boeing's partner supplying 737 MAX jet engines aims to fix a mechanical glitch within weeks. But as Fred Kanayama reports, this comes days before Boeing was to deliver its new planes.
Boeing's grounding of test flights for its new 737 MAX planes could be a short one. One partner of the joint venture that supplies its engine, Safran, said Thursday it'll take just a few weeks to fix the engine glitch that suspended the flights. The news comes just days before Boeing was to deliver its first 737 MAX to Malaysian carrier Malindo Air. The company said it still plans to start deliveries this month. Boeing can't afford a huge delay because experts say that'll cause its inventory to build up. It had been on course to achieve a rarity among plane makers, delivering a jet on time. The plane lists for $110 million, but analysts say discounts could bring that down to around $50 million. Teal Group aviation analyst Richard Abulafia explains just how crucial the 737 MAX is for Boeing's bottom line.
Extremely important for a number of reasons. One is it's easily their best-selling aircraft. Second of all, it's one of their biggest sources of profit, the entire corporation. And then on top of that, you've got production going from the NG model to the MAX at a point where they're at a record level of output.
The MAX is a fourth generation of a jetliner that debuted 50 years ago. Boeing needs to get its MAXes off the ground and into the air fast because rival Airbus has had a one-year head start with its competing A320neo jet.
Shares of Snap plunged after the owner of Snapchat reported slowing user growth and revenue in its first earnings report as a public company, missing some Wall Street estimates as it competes with copycat messaging apps. Sonia Legg reports.
It was all smiles back in March. Investors put aside their concerns about a lack of profits and voting rights. They all wanted a piece of the action. 2 months on, snap, and it's gone. The first earnings report as a public company from Snapchat's owner missed some estimates, and Snap stock fell